I've had a CT scan this morning, and I totally forgot about this until literally, was it yesterday? That's the first time I remembered that, thanks to my wife. She reminded me, hey, isn't your CT scan at one point? And I was thinking, oh my God, yeah, it's tomorrow at 7 a.m. So that was yesterday. So yes, in the midst of this week being all kind of empty, I totally forgot that I actually had a CT scan. But it went very well. It was nice. I brought my own CT scan solution this time with mochaccino flavor. That's very nice, because at Pinnacle they only have the vanilla version. Vanilla, no one really likes it. I guess it's the cheapest, the most widespread one, I guess. And it's just not for me. And the thing is, at Mount Sinai, where I booked the appointment, they have all the flavors. And I said to Cheryl does all the appointments that I have with my oncologist, Dr. Kuznia at Mount Sinai, and some procedures, she schedules those, and she has all those Ready Cat, I believe they're called, by a company called Bracco. Yeah, Ready Cat. And she has all the flavors there. And I said to her, can I take one of these? And usually they gave them to patients that have a CT scan there in Mount Sinai, and she goes, yeah, sure, why not? So I was in the lucky position that I got the mochaccino flavor. So I presented them at reception at Pinnacle this morning when I got there, and I said, hey, I brought my own CT scan solution. And oh my goodness, there are different flavors. And I said, yes, they're different flavors. So I was thinking, maybe I need to make a video with all the flavors, just, educating people about the fact that they have a choice. Vanilla isn't everything, and vanilla isn't actually something that tastes like vanilla. Vanilla is just, the blue bottle, and it's just, it's just not very. It doesn't taste that great, I must say. So there we go. That's another little idea that sprang into my mind this morning there. And speaking of ideas, this is another one I wanted to share with you, because it literally just came to me. Sometimes, when you have two or three things that sort of make up a larger idea, this is kind of what happened. So I read that Larry Page has resigned as CEO from Google, and he was with Google since 97, 98, so it's been a while. He's one of the founding members of Google, of course, with Sergey Brin, and in fact Google as a search engine started as an idea, as a dissertation that the two of them co-wrote, I believe. A bit sketchy on the details. It's been a while since I read that, but it's a dissertation at Stanford that they did together, a project that they built together. And the idea behind it, or behind his thinking, was when the internet back in the day, when that kind of came together, and it is leading up to a point. So don't worry, it is leading up to a point, a much larger point than the history of Google. That's not really what I wanted to share with you. I just wanted to gently introduce you where this is going. So back then, when the internet was just about to start growing, there were so many websites, and many of them were referencing other websites. Much like in the back of dissertations, what would kind of naturally happen, that you give a link or a reference to something that you read about, and so that the lecturers can go ahead and say, oh yeah, actually this guy hasn't just made this up, he has a point there. So and this is the book that I read it in, type thing. So those are kind of that's how the page ranking thing came about. The idea for the page ranks, that how do we know which websites are more relevant to the actual thing that is being discussed? Is the source being linked, or is some reference being referenced by a reference, which is less valuable? And it's a bit more complicated than that. And I think PageRank itself is not something that Google use anymore. They've deprecated that, but it was something that was once high on the agenda. You could see what your own site had, what PageRank it had, but Anyway, so the point of his whole dissertation, rather than just writing the PageRank mechanism thing, was indeed that he said, as the internet grows, there's a lot of information out there, but a lot of it people won't be able to find. So I don't know what I need to type into the URL bar to get to the information that I need. So in essence, it means that information is useless if you don't know how to find it. And that's very true. And that's always been true, and that's why none of us type in a URL into the browser bar unless we really know it. We go somewhere and we try and find something. So we just type the question into Google and out comes the answer. So things are a bit more complicated these days, but the principle is still very true. If we want to find something, we need to know where it is in order to find whatever is relevant to us. So back to my idea then, and this ties in with the Creative Minds project, is that I heard a quote. My friend told me this, and sadly I've forgotten who's actually said it. I'm referencing a reference here, so it's well, I wish it would be something that I could remember, but it was somebody we're talking about the music industry, and it appears that the music industry as such today isn't really an industry much at all anymore. In the 70s and 80s, 60s, 50s, it was an industry. 80s, 90s, I suppose it started dying, and all the whole Napster MP3 thing when that all came about, and that's all very scary. But the point was that back in the day you had an industry and you had musicians that would record music for cash in the studio, and then you'd have records that would be sold, and you'd go in a record store and you'd listen to a few of them, and the ones you like you buy, and that's how you make money, and or that's how the music industry made money. But today that's not quite how it works anymore. So today you don't sell records anymore, and the musicians don't get money anymore, and you don't get the royalties anymore. And where's it all going? Because most of the stuff is free these days. And while that's awesome, how's anybody making any money? So yeah, what a lot of musicians do these days is they make music anyway because they're creative people. But in order to make some cash, they either go on things like Bandcamp, or they do Patreon, or some other kind of crowdfunding thing that lets them earn money for their creative projects. It's more or less exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing Patreon because that means I can finance my projects, or I'm beginning to do so. And some people are really successful with that, and I appreciate that. It's just awesome. So, but that then leads me to the idea that, and that's the quote that I've heard, it appears that there's a lot of creativity out there. There's a lot of creative projects out there, much more so than at any time before. But the problem is, of course, people aren't going to be able to easily find it. If we stick with the music example, if you want to listen to pop music or jazz music, then you go into a record store back in the day and you listen to a few records, or maybe your friend had one and you go, hey, this is awesome, I'm going to buy that, I'm going to support the artist, support the record label, support everything. But it's not how it works anymore. So now all these people who are being creative and who are making their own things, how are we going to find them? And that's a really interesting conundrum, I guess is the word I'm looking for. And that is absolutely true, hence the quote. There's a lot of creativity out there, but a lot of it will never reach the critical mass for these people to get discovered and to reach the correct people. There is I'm glad to know Anders Enger Jensen, and he makes the type of music that I like, and I'm glad that I know of him. But maybe there's 100 other artists out there who make music like that, and I don't know of them because they're not the ones that are being played on the radio, so I don't get to discover them easily. And that's kind of the problem, isn't it? Because if I type it into Google isn't going to give me the correct music that I like to listen to. Spotify is trying to do that with things like, oh, you listen to that artist, so you may also like to listen to these artists. And that's one way of discovering these people and discovering like-minded artists. But it's difficult to do this with music at the moment, so I'm sure somebody's going to come up with an idea. But in the meantime, and this is the idea that I had, and that's what I thought I'm going to put on tape here before I forget it, and I don't know where we're going to go with this, but it's an idea that I thought, let's talk about this. And it may be related, or it may fit in nicely with the Creative Minds project. So I'm thinking maybe there is room for a directory of sorts. A directory as in register the kind of people here on the site that I'm interviewing, that I like, but also artists that are related, and and present them here in a directory, almost like a yellow pages for creativity. You know, something along those lines. I mean, I don't have the details yet, but it came to me that if we need something for creativity and for creative projects and for creative output, that Google is for pretty much everything else. So I really don't know how to do it other than manually. And if I have a look at the manual way search engines were tried out over the years and have died miserably, it's probably not the way to do it. But at the same time, it's very, very niche, and as I said, no solid ideas yet. But I think a type of directory, almost like the yellow pages, almost like the yellow pages for plumber, is perhaps what we need for creative projects. You know, I'm just thinking out loud here, and maybe this is something we can bolt on to the creative projects website. So either make a directory, literally just create it, make it, have a separate website, have something like a Patreon benefit for creative minds that says you can, for, I don't know, tier X, you get included into this directory. That's much like a trade show directory. You know, there's these things for whatever, the toy industry has special directories, or the arts and crafts and framing industry have specific directories into which you can buy yourself into, and the more you pay, the bigger exposure you get there. What's this thing called again for like cameramen and set designers in the TV industry? It's a big book, and it used to be, I don't remember what it's called, but I never really dealt with it. But it was always, people paid a lot of money to get into that book. It's a very specialized for the industry type of thing. And I wonder if this is something that, you know, we should consider for creative minds. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any ideas, if this is something perhaps we can start free, but as the project hopefully will take off, maybe we can incorporate that and sell that as a service. Because of course, I'm thinking of how to monetize the project. And you know, mugs is an idea, but it may not be enough. So you know, that would be a way that other artists might be interested in getting it. They get exposure, but they also get that entry. And maybe one day people will consult this database to go, hey, I like to discover music, I like to discover filmmakers, I like to discover game developers, I like to discover traditional oil painter artists. You know, where do I go to do that? Yeah, I can get that through Google, but it's just not the same as having a specific kind of creativity directory. And that's the idea. How we're going to make it happen, I don't know. I just wanted to get that thought out there, and you know, we'll see where it goes, like so many things.